The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the usual cacophony of 1,000 different species attempting diplomacy. Translator units buzzed and chirped, converting the melodic tones of the Altarians into the clicking consonants preferred by the Zephyrians, while the gaseous nebulans communicated through carefully modulated electromagnetic pulses that made the chamber's lights flicker rhythmically. Jihan Chen sat quietly in the human delegation section, her dark eyes scanning the assembled representatives with barely concealed amusement. At 26, she was the youngest xenolinguist ever appointed to the Council's Translation Committee, a fact that had raised more than a few eyebrows, or their alien equivalents, among the elder species. The current debate concerned mining rights in the Kepler sector, a tedious affair that had dragged on for the better part of 3 standard hours. The hegemony of Vrax, a particularly pompous collection of reptilian species, was making increasingly aggressive territorial claims, their scaled spokesperson hissing threats barely disguised as diplomatic language. The Vraxian claim to these systems is ancient and unquestionable, the ambassador declared, his forked tongue flicking menacingly. Our star maps predate most of your civilizations by millennia. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Vrax were known for their military might and their tendency to solve disputes through conquest rather than negotiation. Several smaller species representatives visibly cowered. Jihan glanced at her fellow human delegates. Ambassador Williams looked tense, his weathered face creased with concern. The mining rights in question would provide crucial resources for humanity's expanding colonies, but picking a fight with the Vrax seemed inadvisable for a species barely 2 centuries into interstellar travel. The Vraxian ambassador continued his tirade, growing more aggressive with each passing moment. Perhaps the younger species fail to understand the concept of legitimate claim. We have held these territories since before your ancestors crawled from whatever primitive world spawned you. That was when Jihan decided she'd heard enough. She stood slowly, her movement catching the attention of nearby delegates. The chamber's translation system automatically focused on her position as she cleared her throat. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I believe there may be some confusion regarding the Vraxian territorial claims. The reptilian ambassador's eyes narrowed to slits. And what would a hatchling human know of our ancient rights? Jihan smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both polite and predatory. Well, I've been reviewing the historical documents submitted by the Vraxian delegation, and I found something quite interesting. She activated her personal data pad, projecting a holographic display of ancient star charts and documents covered in flowing, intricate script. These are indeed impressive historical records, she continued. The language is particularly fascinating. In fact, I recognize it. A few delegates leaned forward with interest. The Vraxian ambassador, however, had gone very still. This is written in classical High Vraxian, Jihan explained, her tone remaining conversational and light. A language that, according to your own cultural archives, died out over 3,000 years ago. Fascinating stuff, really. The grammatical structure shares some remarkable similarities with pre-conquest Altarian, which suggests some interesting historical connections between your species. The chamber had grown quieter, various species picking up on the tension radiating from the Vraxian delegation. Your point, human, the ambassador hissed. Jihan's smile widened slightly. Oh, I was just admiring the craftsmanship. Particularly this section here, she gestured to a specific portion of the display, where the document discusses the eternal dominion over the star fields of Kepler. Beautiful phrasing. Really? She paused, letting the silence stretch for a moment before continuing in the same cheerful tone. Of course, there's just one tiny problem. This particular passage contains a joke. The word joke seemed to echo strangely in the vast chamber, as if the translation systems weren't quite sure how to render it in some of the more serious alien languages. A joke? The Vraxian ambassador's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. Oh yes, Jihan replied, her enthusiasm seemingly genuine. Classical High Vraxian was known for its complex wordplay. This passage, when read with the proper inflection patterns, contains a rather clever pun about the mating habits of Kepler gas whales. Roughly translated, it says, "We claim eternal dominion over these stars, just as the gas whale claims dominion over the cosmic winds, until mating season makes fools of us all." The silence that followed was absolute. Not even the electromagnetic whispers of the nebulans disturbed the quiet. Jihan continued, oblivious to the growing horror on the Vraxian ambassador's face. It's actually quite witty if you understand the cultural context. You see, Kepler gas whales were considered sacred to the ancient Vraxians, and their mating rituals involved elaborate displays that often ended in the males being completely ignored by the females. So the joke is essentially saying, "Silence!" The Vraxian ambassador's roar shook the chamber, but there was desperation in it now, not authority. "How?" he whispered, and for the first time his translator rendered emotion, fear. "How do you know the forbidden tongue?" Jihan blinked, suddenly aware that every eye, optical sensor, and electromagnetic field detector in the chamber was focused on her. Forbidden? Oh, I wouldn't say forbidden. Difficult, certainly. The verb conjugations alone took me 3 months to master, and don't get me started on the ceremonial subjunctive mood. But forbidden? I just thought it was dead. Dead languages do not stay dead among humans, came a new voice from the chamber's upper galleries. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, draped in shifting robes that seemed to absorb light. The eternal archivists, the galaxy's oldest known species, rarely spoke in council sessions. "We have watched species rise and fall for 100,000 of your years," the archivist continued, its voice like the whisper of stellar wind through asteroid fields. "We have seen languages die, cultures crumble, entire civilizations fade to myth. But humans?" It paused, something that might have been amusement coloring its words. "Humans collect dead things and breathe life back into them." The archivist's attention turned to Jihan. "How many?" "I'm sorry?" "How many dead languages do your people speak?" Jihan shifted uncomfortably. I'm not sure I understand the question." "We have universities, archaeological linguistics programs, cultural preservation societies. When we find something interesting, we study it. Latin, Sanskrit, Sumerian, Ancient Egyptian, Classical High Vraxian. It's just what we do." "Just what you do," the archivist repeated softly. The Vraxian ambassador had sunk into his seat, his scaled head buried in his claws. Around the chamber, other delegates were murmuring urgently to their aides, calling up their own databases, checking their own historical claims. "The Terran delegation's objection to the Vraxian territorial claim is noted," announced the council's moderator, a insectoid being whose species was notable for their strict adherence to protocol. "This session is adjourned pending further review of submitted documentation." As the chamber began to empty, Ambassador Williams approached Jihan, his expression unreadable. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" he asked quietly. Jihan looked around at the departing delegates, noting the wide berth most were giving the human section. "I pointed out a historical inconsistency?" Williams was quiet for a long moment. "Jihan, most species bury their dead languages for a reason. Some things are meant to stay forgotten. But why? Knowledge is knowledge. Understanding how people communicated, how they thought, how they saw the universe, isn't that valuable? To humans, maybe, but to the rest of the galaxy, you just demonstrated that humanity can reach across time itself and drag the dead back to life." Williams gestured toward the now empty Vraxian section. "Do you think that seems natural to them?" Jihan followed his gaze, finally beginning to understand. "They're afraid. Terrified," Williams confirmed. "Because if we can resurrect dead languages, if we can make ancient jokes live again, what else might we be capable of bringing back?" As they left the chamber, Jihan couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just crossed some invisible line in the galaxy's perception. They were no longer just the newcomers, the young species finding their place among the stars. They were the necromancers of knowledge, the ones who refused to let anything truly die, and in a galaxy where most species preferred their ancient secrets to stay buried, that made them something far more dangerous than warriors or conquerors. It made them archaeologists,